Welcome to My Long Island TV. From Manhasset to Montauk, we have traveled our communities to bring you the following events. I'm your host, Waldo Cabrera. My Long Island TV starts now.
We're on Manhasset Bay. We're sitting at the Manhasset Bay Marina at the beginning of the head of the harbor. Usually our season is from April 15th to November 1st. We're going on a 47-foot Crosby touring tug built up in Osterville, Massachusetts by the Crosby Boat Company. The harbor tour is about an hour and a half. Sometimes we get on the boat and people are excited to be on the boat, and we'll go out a little bit longer, especially on the end of the trip. The sunset tour, when people have a little bit more time, we'll go out to 2 hours. We'll go out around the perimeter of the harbor. We'll see the mansions and the different estates in the harbor. We'll see the lighthouses, Sands Point Lighthouse, Execution Lighthouse, and Stepping Stone Lighthouse. The hill right there is an old Indian cemetery that they left because they couldn't sand mine, or they wouldn't sand mine through cemeteries. So a lot of Port Washington's, the way the hills are because when they were sand mining, they didn't go into the cemeteries or went around them. That's the old Grumman estate. Grumman, also with the aircraft in Port Washington, lived here in Manhasset Bay. That house behind the dock, that was Bill O'Reilly's house. Now, at one time, the Marx Brothers actually lived in that house and rented that house. We're looking at Alan King, the comedian's old property. The property sold for about $19 million. They tore down the main house, which is an old Tudor, and they are putting up this house now. That house is owned by owner of J&R Music World, and that house was in the film Carlito's Way. We're looking back in Great Neck on the across from Plandome, and this is where F. Scott Fitzgerald lived during the time when he was writing The Great Gatsby. Well, we're coming out into the end of Kings Point. We're coming into the end of Sands Point, and this is where we would say that East Egg and West Egg, when he talked about the two eggs looking identical to each other, that if you looked overhead, they would look almost exactly alike. Well, if you look across at these 2 points and you go from Hewlett Point to Barker's Point, these points almost look exactly like each other, as the Gatsby describes in the book. You're looking at the piece of property where the first international airport in the United States was. This is where the flying boats came out of here, went over to England. They would roll the boats up and down this ramp in here, and now, of course, it's starting to get torn apart, but they're looking to rebuild this property now. They tore the old hangars down that were built by the Italian government. This White House that's being redone, that was Carl Fisher started Miami Beach, came up here, started Montauk as the Miami Beach of the North. That house is just the way it was when Carl Fisher moved in. We're out in the middle of Long Island Sound. We're at the Execution Lighthouse. The lighthouse was built or finished in 1867. A group called Historically Significant Structures purchased the lighthouse for $1, and they're redoing the lighthouse now. When they buy them for $1, they can't change the windows. They got to keep everything up to the date that it was built. They can't put anything real new in unless they go through the government and ask first. The Sands Point Lighthouse is on the Arizona Iced Tea property. That's part of his property, and he did at one time want to change it a little bit, but because of the historical value of the lighthouse, they wouldn't allow him to do that, so he's got to keep the lighthouse up there. We're looking in at Sands Point again, and we're looking at the Hearst Castle, and this is the gatehouse that we're looking at right now. Because of the taxes in the 30s that they started taxing all these estates, they were calling the estates the white elephants, so they were no longer able to afford to keep these estates going with the taxes, so they started tearing them down. Any of the homes along this area, especially before 2005, were worth between 19 to 20 million, as high as $60 million on some of these homes on the Gold Coast of Long Island. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming down and talking to us about going out on the Port Washington water taxi, and we hope that you can come down and visit us during our summer season, where we have a lot of great restaurants and a lot of great places to visit here in Port Washington, and see us when the weather is a little bit warmer.